Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deputy's Timesheets and Exporting training session. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Golly, and I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Deputy, and I'm joined again by my colleague, Charles, today. We're going to deep dive into managing your timesheets in your Deputy account today, specifically covering the following points: timesheet settings, business settings, creating unscheduled timesheets, and finally, approving and exporting timesheets. And as usual, at the end of the training, we'll be running a Q&A session, but you can also ask your questions throughout the training. Here is how it goes. We want this session to be interactive, so please ask your questions using the Q&A panel at the bottom of your Zoom window shown on the right-hand side of this slide. We will not be able to respond to questions in the general chat, so please note that only questions in the Q&A panel will be addressed. We'll try to get through as many questions as possible during our session and provide a follow-up FAQ afterwards, along with today's recording. At the end of your time today, we'll run a quick poll within Zoom and ask for your feedback for today's session. And with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Charles, to begin today's training session.
Thank you, Golly, and hello, everyone, and welcome back to our training session. Now, before we start, I believe we have several new users of Deputy who may not know what we are and what we do. So Deputy is a comprehensive time-based and attendance platform that includes scheduling, digital clocking, team communication, and today's subject, timesheets. We are entirely cloud-based. That means that you can access Deputy anywhere and on any device. We also have apps available on Google Play and the App Store. We also have integrations with all major payroll, point of sales, and HR systems. Here at Deputy, we work across many industries from hospitality, retail, healthcare, education, and so on. We also cover businesses of many different sizes, from your local cafe to much bigger companies such as Bunnings. Now, before we start, I will just jump into a prepared test account. So give me 1 second. Welcome to our test account. Before we get to the nitty-gritty of approving and exporting timesheets, we first of all need to go through some settings. So to do that, let's click on our locations and click on our main location, which is in this case, du Client Rotisserie. From there, all we have to do is click on Edit Settings. And select Timesheets. Now this area, this page is very important, as what you turn on, turn off, or change will have an effect when you are approving timesheets. So let's start by the beginning. The first three are about clocking in. If you want your employees to clock in via the web browser, so that's their Deputy account on a computer, via mobile device, through the app, or via SMS. By default, the first two are on, the third one is off. You can change it as you wish, but we do recommend keeping the first two on. Now this one, the fourth one, is specific to the kiosks. So the kiosks are tablets that employees use to clock in and clock off. If this one is turned on, this will require a photo to be taken when employees start or end their shift in the kiosk. Consider it some way a security to make sure that they are actually where they are. Now we're getting to a little more tricky part. The next two, these two, are about modifying and creating timesheets. The first one, allow submitting ad hoc timesheets via web or mobile only, excluding kiosk tablets. This allows employees to amend existing timesheets or create timesheets in the past via web or mobile. If you disable this, the employees will not be able to create timesheets in the past. And the second one is, if turned on, will enable employees to modify their timesheets prior to ending their shifts. If you turn it off, then they have to end their shift before doing anything else. Now, there's a little specificity about these two. The second one cannot be turned off if the first one is on. To turn off, allow employees to modify timesheets, you need to turn the first one off, and from there you can turn it off. If you do not want your employees to be able to submit ad hoc timesheets, but you want them to be able to modify, keep that one off and turn this one on. However, if the first one you want it to be turned on, it will automatically turn on the second one. Okay, so the next three are pretty self-explanatory. This is about, it's basically how many minutes before the end of their shift an employee can submit their timesheets, as well as the minimum length of their timesheet. So for example, here it says that they can submit their timesheets 15 minutes before the end. This you can change as much as you want. You can put 0, 15, 10, 5, and below the minimum length of timesheet means that if an employee starts a shift and then it's less than 15 minutes or less, and they end it, it will not be taken into account. That means that their shifts have to be more than 15 minutes. You can also change the value just by clicking here and selecting 1 minute, 5, 10, or 15. And the final one is about meal breaks. And by default, all meal breaks are unpaid. Okay, so now we go into the rounding of timesheets. So it's a group of 7, which starts here and goes all the way down to here. And these ones are very, very important. So the first one is to enable auto rounding of real-time timesheets. This means that when a timesheet is submitted, it will automatically round the times. So if someone starts at 9:58 and finishes at 4:58, it will automatically round the time to 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. Now below we have round start of timesheets, round end of timesheets, and round break of timesheets. This basically is about how you want to round the start time, end time, and the break of the timesheets. In this, we have 4 different options. So if we click here for the round start of timesheets, and we click on the menu, then we have 4 different options that show up. No rounding. So this means that if an employee clocks in at 8:58, it will show as 8:58 in the timesheet, and you won't be able to round it. Closer 5, 10, 15, earlier or later. So closer means it will go to the time block in the closer 5, 10, 15 minutes to that time, sorry. Earlier would be to the earlier time, and the later one would be to a later time. For example, let's say we have a employee that starts at 8:56, like we said. If we select closer 5, then it will round the time to 8:55. Earlier, we'll go for the earlier time. So that would be, let's say earlier 10 would be 8:50, and later 10 would be 9. And so it's the same thing for the end times and the timesheet breaks. And below is also about rounding time, and it's kind of the same way. So if you click yes on any of those, that means that, for example, for the first one, that your employees cannot start their shifts early. If they clock in at 8:58, but in their schedule, it says that they're supposed to start at 9, deputy will make them start at 9 or later. Same thing for below. If they click yes for the round end timesheets to schedule, if it is later, that means that they cannot finish their schedule after their end time. So if they clock out, if they're supposed to finish at 5, but they clock out at 5:10 or 5:20, then we will go to 5. However, if they clock out earlier, then the options that we have selected up here above will be applied. And same thing for the break. So they cannot have shorter breaks. They can only have their normal break time or longer. Now, below that, we have the auto time approve real-time timesheets. This means that if a timesheet corresponds to a scheduled shift is submitted via mobile or kiosk within a selected variance, the timesheet would automatically be approved. By default, it's set on never, but you can always change it. We have different options. So when variance scheduled for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and so on. Now, the rest one are pretty self-explanatory. Allow employees to clock in early via shift, could be on or off. Link unscheduled shifts with a scheduled shift determined by time variance. So usually we just go by best default. So this is about how an unscheduled timesheet is linked to a scheduled shift within the same day. Also allow employees to break early and auto-suggest breaks. Now we've went through our timesheet settings in the location. We need to have a quick look before we go to approving to our business settings. So to do that, all we have to do is go up here, select Hello Charles. So in your account, be hello, your name. Click on it, go to business settings. That's the one with the little building right here. Let's click on that. And this will show up the business settings for this account. And from here, we select the fifth one from the left, timesheets. Now, here what is important is the shift questions. But before we get into that, let's just have a quick look at what we have here. So we have 3 on-off buttons here. This is their configuration by default. And so they're as well pretty self-explanatory. The first one is to allow unpaid timesheets to be exported. By default, we turn it off as there is no pay attached to it. The second one, allow employees to clock in via photo or on kiosk when they forgot their PIN. That means that when employees want to clock in using a PIN, which they have in their app, if they forgot, instead of using the PIN, they can use a photo. And finally, allow employees to submit timesheet in non-work areas. That one, by default, is off. And we usually tell our customers to keep it off, as this one can create some issues. These are for very, very specific scenarios that we will not cover here. So by default, it is turned off. Now, above this button, we have recalculate approved timesheets in chronological order, and with a different menu that we can have on off, only for selected timesheets and onwards, and all timesheets within the applicable range. So this means that this is for those times where, for example, you have your timesheets it's Friday, and you're going to approve the timesheets for the week. And you decide not to approve them in a Monday to Friday way. So for example, you don't start with approving the Monday timesheets first and then the Tuesday. You go for some reason Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on. What happens at that time is Deputy will calculate and the overtime on a weekly basis, and you might have on your Monday timesheet, so the last one you'll approve, an overtime of a couple of hours, which should not show up because employees start their week on a Monday. By clicking here and having only from the selected timesheet and onward, that means that Deputy will calculate. That means that, that the order in which you approve timesheets will not have an effect on, for example, like I said, the overtime. So Deputy will calculate the overtime in a weekly base instead of a daily base. So if you want to start on Friday, then go back your way up, then you're not going to have your Monday with your overtime hours. This only works with weekly overtime. And now to the top, we have our shift questions. So to see what it does, let's just click on it. Now, the shift questions allows you to create a custom field for your employees when they're clock in or they clock off. So for example, it could be with everything that's happening at the moment with COVID, let's say you want your employees when they clock in to take a picture of a thermometer reading that you have put in the office and that all your employees need to have. So for example, let's create a custom field just for that. So in custom field type, we will select timesheets. This is because this is where we want the information to be. Below, we have active, inactive. So you can choose to make this field active or not. So we want active. The field name will be the title of the shift question. So let's go with thermometer. reading. Now, below that, we have field details. So this can be a quick explanation for your employees. And in this case, in the case of our thermometer reading example, we want them to please upload the thermometer reading when clocking in. So below that, we can select what type of field. So if it's going to be a text, a question, or a file. Since we want a picture, we'll go with file. And below this is validation. That means, do you want your employee will upload this. Do you want them to approve, or do you want your supervisors to approve, to have the power to approve or not approve that picture? Default value, this only works if you have multiple values, so multiple answers or multiple questions. So for now, since we only want one picture, we don't need to put anything. Display timing is when we want that shift question to appear. So by default, deputy will ask this to be on the clock out, but we can change that. To do that, all we have to do is click on select, clock out or update, clock in or clock in and out and update. In our case, we want them to clock in. So just click on clock in. Display rules, we're not going to touch anything here. And now we're in the areas. So by default, if nothing is clicked here, that means that everything is clicked. However, what might happen is we are working on improving this. So just to be sure, let's just click on Duclin rotisserie. Then we can see that all the areas within that location have been automatically selected. So we can unselect 1, 2, or all. And same thing for the Duclin 2. And then we have the API name. The API name is something that is required if we want to connect this to a third-party solution. It usually pre-populates when the field name is typed in. As you can see, it says here thermometer reading. And for the sort order, since we just want a picture, we don't need to put anything here. Now that we have created our custom shift question, we have to make sure that we save this. That way, when it's saved, the next time an employee wishes to clock in, they will see that they need to upload the thermometer reading when clocking in. So back here. Now that we've done all the settings, so in the location and the business settings, let's get to our timesheets. So to get to the timesheets, we first need to approve them. To do that, we go to timesheets, click here, and select approve timesheets. Now we can see, as almost everything in Deputy, the top left will have an impact on what you see in the rest of the screen. So at the top left, we have our location selection, where you can select your different locations or all locations or specific areas within a location. So you can be as macro or micro as you want. And here we have our time range. So this is selected for this week. We can go in the past to see past timesheets, or in the future, which should be empty because we have no timesheets in the future. You can also, if you wish, click on the dates and select if you want just today, the current week, a fortnight, month. Same thing if you want yesterday, the last 7 days, the last 14 days, and so on. Or if you want to be really specific, you can select a date range, with this area being the start date and this area being the end date. So we are currently happy with this location. Well, let's select all locations. And this is the week. Now, before approving these timesheets, we have a button on the right here, that says Add Timesheet. This is for when we have a unrostered or unscheduled timesheet. Unrostered or unscheduled timesheets are used when an employee wasn't initially rostered or scheduled, but a shift was worked. So in this window, let's click on it. We'll see that we can select an employee and the date of the shift. So let's select Alex and say he worked today. And we go Add Timesheet. And now we're in Alex's timesheet approval. And we can see at the top that the timesheet that we've just created is not present. Because if we just look below, it says right here that unrostered timesheets will be saved when and only when you approve it. So to create this unrostered or unscheduled timesheets, we have to manually fill it out. So for that, we go to the date. That's what we selected in the beginning. That was today, area of work. Here we have a drop-down menu. So we just click on that and select. We can either search for the area just by typing it up top, or we can search for it just by scrolling down. And you see that, for example, in front of house, there is a Duke in parentheses. This is the code to each location. So you have Duke for front of house, and Duke Rot front of house. So since we have two locations, we have two codes. So let's select Duke front of house. Let's put in their start time, 9 a.m. until 5. If I just leave it at 5 and just click somewhere else, it will default to 5 a.m. We don't want that. We don't want him to be working almost 24 hours. So we need to make sure that we change the a.m. manually into p.m. Or if you're used to working with a 24-hour time, you can put 17 and it will go to 5 p.m. Below that, we have our break summary with the meal breaks and the rest break, and we can also add another break detail. Okay, so then we've done that, and as well as below the timesheet details, we have something called the employee journal. Now, this is important for you as a manager, location manager, supervisor, system admin, if you want to give feedback to your employees. For example, you can say, Alex, he came last minute, so came last minute to replace someone. There we go. And then you can submit it in their journal, and then there the other managers can have access to it. You can also select in the employee journal a category, if it's a positive comment or a negative comment. Great. Now let's go to a scenario that we all know all too much. So for this, so you see that I have unsaved, I have not saved my timesheet. That means that if I go somewhere else, all data will be lost. We're okay with that because we'll be just going somewhere else. Now, let's just select Charles for this quick example. Charles was supposed to work today. He was supposed to start working from 9 to 5, as you can see here, his schedule details. However, he clocked in at 9, which is great. But at 9:56, as you can see right here, as we have a summary of the timesheet, he clocked out. He wasn't feeling too well, so he went home. And so now in this timesheet, we have to approve his timesheet because he did work almost an hour, and all work deserves a pay. So before we approve, we must verify that everything is correct. So he did work today. He was supposed to work at the bar. We can see here, start, finish. He started at 9, finished at 9:56. Break summary. Since he worked less than an hour, no break was included. However, if you have an employee that worked maybe half a day before going home because they were sick, it can show up here. if that employee did take a break, you can put the meal break here, or if it's a rest break, you can put the duration here, or you can add a break. And we can see that Charles was very nice with us because he put a comment saying that he was sick. Now, everything here seems correct. So let's approve the timesheet. When approving timesheets, we have two options. We have approve and next and approve. So approve and next will approve the timesheet and take you to the next employee or the next timesheet that needs to be approved. While approve will just approve the timesheet and then afterwards show you a summary of that timesheet. It's up to personal preferences which one you want to use, but in this case of this example, let's select just approve. So we just click on approve, machine's working, and we can see that the timesheet for Thursday went from pending in yellow to green approved. And now we have our timesheet summary, which summarizes what we just went through. He worked Thursday at the bar, 9:59 to 9:56. This warning sign tells us that he was supposed to work from 9 to 5 with an hour break, but he was sick, and these are his pay rates. The thing is, Charles was supposed to work from 9 to 5, but he only worked from 9 to 5:56. So we need to create another timesheet for the rest of his shifts, saying that he was sick. So to do that, we'll just go back to what we did beforehand. We're going to add a timesheet. So this is a non-rostered or unscheduled timesheet. To do that, we click on Add Timesheet, Employee, Charles, date of shift, the 24th, and Add Timesheet. Now, usually for unrostered or unscheduled timesheets, we just fill it out the blanks where they work, the start time, finish time, and so on. However, here, Charles was sick. So the date doesn't change. And in area of work, instead of selecting Duke front of house, Duke kitchen bar, or Duke Rot front of house, and so on, if we scroll down, we can see we have the different leave types. So annual leave, bereavement leave, community leave, long service, sick leave, time off in lieu, and then unpaid leaves. Here we need to select the sick leave in this case that best matches our situation. So if they're casual and they don't have access to paid leave, it would be an unpaid sick leave. If they're a full-timer, if they have a salary, they might have access to sick leave, paid sick leave, or not. In this case, we'll just select unpaid sick leave. We can see that there it goes, unpaid sick leave. Start time, we want to start it at the end of his previous timesheet, so 9:56. And round time, we go for 5 p.m., which was how he was initially supposed to work. So I'm going to put 17 and rounds to 5 p.m. And then from there, all we have to do is approve or approve and next. So in the last one, I clicked approved. This, I will show you what happens if you click approve and next. Oh, meal break, of course. He was sick. He did not have a meal break. So duration is 0. And now approve and next. And as you can see, we are no longer in Charles's timesheets. We went directly to Alex. This is the main difference between approve and next and approve. Okay, now next to our the add timesheet button, we have here, it's grayed out, is the approve all. This button is only available when timesheets have been submitted. And it allows you as a manager, system admin, or supervisor to approve all the timesheets for that one employee only. You can also unapprove all by just clicking the arrow next to it. Unapprove all. Now, in addition to helping you make your work much easier, the approve and unapprove all button allows you as well to, for example, one of your employees has had their change in their pay rates. And the timesheets that have been submitted are on the, sorry, but the timesheets have already been submitted. That means that the new pay rate will not be taken into account. So if you unapprove all and then reapprove all, this will tell this deputy will go into that employee's profile, look at their latest rate, and update with the new rates, which would show up here. Think about it as refreshing your web page with new information. Now, we just went through how to approve a timesheet in our example. And we saw also the act of creating an unrostered or unscheduled timesheet. However, if you remember back at the beginning, I did talk about the possibility of submitting timesheets for the web browser, mobile, or the kiosk. So just as an example, let's go to my friend Felix here. Now, Felix went to work this week, and on Wednesday, he submitted his timesheet. He submitted his timesheet using the kiosk. So if we click on that, we can see that we have the different details that show up, Wednesday, the area of work, and a little something different, his picture. Not the most flattering, but it's a good picture anyways. This is an advantage the kiosk has in regards to web browser and mobile. You can ask your employees to clock in and out and take a picture. Now, if the display here is correct, we can approve by clicking approve and next, or just approve. However, while looking at his timesheet, we see that he finished at 4:06. We don't want to have minutes in our timesheets. We want them to be rounded. And now if we go back to if we go back to the beginning of this webinar, I talked to you about rounding times to closer, earlier, or later. If we hover the mouse over the round button, we can see the different selections we've decided earlier on. We can see that, for example, round time, if we click on the round button, it would round the start time to the closer 15 minutes block. It would round the end time to the later 15-minute block, and would round the break to the closer 15-minute block. So let's click on the round to see what happens with the end time. As you can see, it automatically rounded it to 4:15 instead of 4:06. So this is where what we went through in the beginning has an impact on what you are doing now. If he started not at 9, but at, for example, 8:32, and we go back to 4:06, and we click again on round, we can see it automatically goes to 8:30 and 4:15. This is what we meant in the beginning with the round earlier, closer, and later. This is very useful if you don't really want to have those weird times in your timesheet and you want everything to be 5, 10, 15, or just on the dot, 9, 10, and so on. Also, so we're happy with this. Let's approve and next. Let's just click on approve. Now, if no timesheet has been submitted, for example, let's go to Gaston. As we can see here, he was supposed to work on Tuesday, but for some reason, he did not submit his timesheet. He did not clock in and he did not clock out. You, as the person that approves timesheets, you can create the timesheet for them. To do that, all you have to do is here, we have schedule details. So this is what he was supposed to work with his meal break. And if you click on import schedule details, it will take the information from the schedule to your timesheet. So you can see Tuesday the 26th was supposed to work at the bar from 9 to 5 with 1 hour meal break. This is another way when and if your employees forget to clock in and out. However, it would be best if they would remember to clock in and out, because otherwise you would be doing this for everyone. Now that we have approved the timesheets, let's export them. So just click approve and next. To do so, all we have to do is go to timesheets, click here, and go to export timesheets. Like in approved timesheets or schedule, what we select here will have an impact on the rest. However, unlike approved timesheets, in exporting timesheets, you can only select locations. So all locations or your different locations. Here, let's go with all locations. And as well, here we have our different dates. So we can go this week, past week, future weeks. And below that, so here we have select all, select none, and the name of the employee's timesheets we can actually export. You can manually select the ones you want, like this. You can either click on select all to select all of them, or select none to unselect. And if you want just maybe 2, you can go for 2. If you don't want to select Felix anymore, click here, click back on their name, and click on somebody else. Now, in our case, for this example, we'll just select all. As you can see, when I've selected all, the selected item summary changed. It went from 2 to 4 employees selected to 4 employees, 4 out of 4 employees selected, and 9 out of 9 items selected. And below that, we have something that's very important, which is the item breakdowns. We can break down items by 2 categories, either by employee, as it is by default, where you can select if you want to have a pay breakdown as well. Just click on pay breakdown. Or if you want to see it for everyone, just click on detail all. And the details for everyone shows up. And if you don't want to see it, just click on collapse and you'll just have their name. And if you wish to click to view their timesheets, just click here. And you can select and unselect the timesheets you want to export as well. And the other one, more useful, especially if you export to a payroll software that we use, is group by pay rate. Now this Deputy integrates with many different payroll softwares, but the 2 main ones are Xero and MYOB. To export to Xero and MYOB, we have a piece that is very important. Here we have the export code. This export code must be the same in Xero and MYOB. And when I say must be the same, it has to be exactly the same characters, including spaces, including hyphens, and everything else. And to add a little spice in life, MYOB has a limit of 31 characters for their code. So what we usually recommend is, if you wish to export to Xero or MYOB, is go to your MYOB or Xero profile, copy the export codes, go back to go here to Deputy, and you can edit them by just clicking Edit, highlighting it, changing it, and saving. This will save the export code for that pay rate. That way, next time you export, Deputy will already have saved the export code that is matching in MYOB or Xero. As well as, I don't know if you can see this, but here we have a not set to export. That is because in Deputy, we do not export timesheets that are for employees that are on a salary, as whatever the hours they do, they are still paid the same. That's why we do not export salary-based employees, timesheets for salary-based employees. Now that we have grouped by pay rate, we have our employees. Let's go to export selected items. So here, this area, as you can see, this is a custom exporter, but here we can select the different payroll software we integrate to. As you can see, we have a lot of different softwares, from Gusto, We'll work with the NZ, MYOB account right live, NetSuite, Preceda, and so on, and zero payroll. So in this case of our example, let's say we want to export to zero. So we click on zero payroll. And as we are not connected to zero, Deputy will ask us to connect to zero. If I click on that, a new window will pop up asking it will take me to zero, asking me to log into my zero account with my password and my email to make sure that the two systems are speaking to each other. And once you're there, Deputy will propose how you wish to export. If you wish to export timesheets or not, we want to export timesheets. And to show this, I will just go to a very quick article and a screenshot. So once we have decided to export to zero, this window will pop up. And what's very important in this window is this little menu here, this square that you can click or not. It's replace zeros base hourly rates with Deputy's base hourly rates. So this is very important because let's say, for example, that your rates in Deputy are updated. However, the ones in zero are not. If you click on this button right here, this will tell when we are exporting the timesheets from Deputy to zero, this will tell zero to take the base hourly rates from Deputy and not use the ones you have in zero. If we do not click on this button, then Deputy, when exporting timesheets, will just export the timesheets, and then zero will calculate the rates using the pay rates they have in their software. This also works for MYOB account right live. So the same window will show up. Instead of saying zero payroll, it would say MYOB account right live and replace MYOB's base hourly rates with Deputy's base hourly rates. And if we're okay with that, we click or we do not click, and we click on export. Now, let's say we don't have your payroll software, or you want to have a CSV file. We do propose that option as well. So in the payroll selection, instead of looking for zero payroll, we can just type in CSV, which means Excel. So you can also look for Excel. And we have all fields, daily, totals, and overtime. But what we also have is something we are currently working on, is the custom payroll exporter. So the custom payroll exporter basically creates a spreadsheet and allows you to select the information you want to be presented in that spreadsheet. In this preview, we have, for example, the employee payroll ID, their first name, last name, timesheet date, hours, start time, end time, meal break duration, and total hours. If that does not work out for you, you can always click here on Edit. And this will take you to where you can customize your payroll exporter. So these are the ones I have selected. You can add new ones by going on the right side. Click on employee. We can add first name, preferred name, ID, and in the timesheets, then we have different options as well. You can also change the format setting. If you want a CSV or text or .dat, if there's a fixed column, a fixed width, if you want to disable column headers and group, if you want to group the data. And also within each different column, you can customize it as well. If we just click on those 6 buttons right here, we can change the column header, have a format modifier. This is especially useful, for example, for timesheet dates. As you can see, here it is selected to have year, month, day, but you can change it to have it month, day, year, day, month, year, and so on and so on. And then once we're happy with that, all we have to do is click on export and save. This will generate the file for the export, and the export has been done successfully. This is a custom exporter, so it will download the file as a CSV. And before you can download the file, you have to make sure that your browser allows for pop-ups. Now, and with that, we have exported timesheets. Now, before I take you back to Gali over for the Q&A, let's just recap quickly what we did. We went through the different settings for the timesheets from both the location and the business perspective. We created an unrostered or unscheduled timesheets. We also created a sick timesheet. And finally, we went through the different ways of approving a timesheet, how to export them to Xero, MYOB account right live, and our custom exporter. And now, back to Gali for the Q&A.
Thank you, Charles. We've had a lot of questions coming through, and thank you for everyone who was participating in those. We managed to answer quite a few of them as well. We did pick out a few that we think that would be most, let's say, provide the most value for everyone in this session. We'll go through those. And if we've missed any of those questions that you've answered, we will publish this recording with the remaining questions and answers, and that we emailed out to you. So let's get into it. Okay. We had a few questions with regards to how to add higher duties or anything to do with shift loadings or allowances to a timesheet. So there's a couple of things with that. I will just get Charles to, if we can just go into, to approve timesheets. This is a manual step that will be done in Deputy, partly because it will probably not be attached to the award, but there's two things that we need to check as well, based on the employee profile and the steps that we will do here. So first of all, we will just take we can probably just take the timesheet that we have here. So as you can see, it's an approved timesheet. This step, we will have to unapprove the pay on the right-hand side. If we can click that, and please note that this will have to be done either by the location manager or the system administrator. And this is because your supervisors will probably not have access to pay rates unless you have a custom access level. That's a little bit different. But in this scenario, it will only be the location manager or the system administrator or someone who does your payroll. So just answer, as you can, we've got Charles here on the base salary. So let's say if this was an award, maybe Charles, if we can find somebody that is on an award, that would be probably a little bit more useful. So with the shift loading, great. Excellent. So you can see with the base pay rate, so we've got the award selected here, and on the right-hand side where it says the hours, that's the hours that Alex has done on this shift. And just underneath shift loadings, if we can just click on there, excellent. And if we could just scroll down a little bit, you'll see, so there's a whole list of the different allowances that we have, and you can see that it says not automated. So this is where you know that this is a manual step that you have to do when approving a timesheet. So here we've got higher duties, we've got other things like laundry allowance, if that's what it is, or meal allowance, depending on what you offer to your employees. For this example, we'll take higher duties. And here you'll see that the hours, so you have to put in the sort of like, this is equivalent to the units or the hours that they've done this higher duty. So let's, as an example, we can take maybe 2 hours of higher duties that Alex has done. And then we'll just click on approve pay. And that's where you're going to get so just right at the bottom, you would have added the higher duties. So this is how you do it on the timesheet. But one thing I'd like to point out before adding any sort of shift loading is that, first of all, to check that the rate is correct in the employee profile. So Charles, if we can go into the people tab, please. And we pick Alex. Yep, excellent. Into edit. This is where you're going to get all of the information of the employee's pay rate. So if we just click onto the employment details. So this is where we've set up Alex on an award in Deputy. And then, so right at the first field is the pay rate that we've set Alex on. So he's on 22.5 per hour. And then everything else comes with the award version. So you can see that this is grayed out. These are things that we update from Deputy from our end. when there's an award update. And then if we just keep going down, and it should be right at the bottom, so here. So there you go, you've got the laundry allowance here, and then the higher duties should be somewhere, yeah, just there. So in this case, we haven't actually got a rate in for Alex, so just make sure that that's in there. Just put in the rate that they would be getting per hour when they do complete a higher duty in that case. And then we click save. Excellent. So with that, because Alex didn't have a higher duty set, and we've already approved that timesheet, we are going to have to unapprove the timesheet again because we've made a change in his pay rate, and for us to be able to trigger that rate. So it just, again, we'll just unapprove the pay. And so everything is right, and then reapprove it, correct. Excellent. And if we go into an export timesheet, yeah. And there we go. And if we just go into even group by pay rate, maybe, oh, we were on group by pay rate. Excellent. Yeah. So you can see that, yeah, the shift loading's been added. So yeah, two things to take into account. And just like off what Charles was saying earlier as well, if there is ever a change in the pay rates of your employees, please note that if you do have approved timesheets from before, and you've, after approving those timesheets, you've upgraded the person with a higher pay rate, you will need to unapprove the previous timesheets and then reapprove the timesheets again, in order for the new rates to be picked up. So that's really important. Okie dokes. So that was one. Another question that we had was, do my employees need to have a profile picture to use the kiosk facial recognition? Really great question that came in through. And yes, your employees do need a profile picture attached to their profiles. And that's because the system obviously needs something to compare it to. So like if you were taking the sort, if you've set the required photo for a kiosk when starting a shift and ending a shift, then yeah, in this scenario, again, you will need a profile picture in that sense. Someone else had also mentioned that they can't see the payroll list when they come to export the timesheet. If you can't see the list of all the payrolls when we're exporting a timesheet from the list that was shown earlier, then we do suggest to create your own custom payroll report. So the payroll exporter that Charles has just got here, it is in beta, but you can go in there and customize a timesheet sort of that accepts that your payroll or your payroll controllers require as well. And then another with regards to access levels, we had a really good question as well as to who can see and approve pay in timesheets. Again, really, really important. Only location managers and system administrators can approve time and pay in a timesheet. Your supervisors will only be able to approve time, and they will not be able to approve pay rates. And that is because they obviously cannot see pay rates from their behalf. Therefore, just off what we were saying, custom shift loadings or allowances need to be there. So this is the, thanks Charles for bringing that up as well. This is the article for our access levels, and you can see the supervisor access level. They won't be able to see pay rates as opposed to location managers and system administrators. Just one more, I guess one more quick question is, can we have accurate clock in and clock out times? Yes, you can. Charles, if we can just go into the timesheet settings in the location. You can just remove, and if we just scroll down, if you want accurate timings as to when your employees clock in and clock out, and you don't want the managers to not round their time or anything, then where it says round start time of timesheets, if we can just, we can just click on no rounding, and that will disable the button that comes up in the timesheets when approving. Okie dokes. I think that is it. We're just running on a last couple of minutes. So I would like to launch our poll. Again, thank you so much for everybody who was participating in the Q&A. We will address any other questions that have been asked but not answered. And we'll take just a couple of minutes to complete a short survey as well. The video training and the questions and answers, again, will be posted on our training page on our website. And please let us know in the poll how you like today's session. And with that, we thank you very much and wish you a very wonderful day ahead.